Welcome. Let's talk about academic writing again. This is the third video in the series. If you haven't seen the first two, go and check them out, especially the first one where I set this up, give you some context. Right, we'll get straight into it. The first thing to do, this is one of the first points that I say to people. And even though this video is kind of talking about finishing your work, this sets up the way I like to think about finishing your work. But it's accepting that your writing is bad. So I can think at a level and I can understand academic ideas where I write them down and I know it's wrong. And I know that I haven't written about it well enough. I understand it better than I can write about it. It's one of the reasons why I do these videos, to be honest. And I understand it, I can talk about it, but I haven't got the point down. Now, if I spend my day trying to make each point that I write correct before moving on, I will probably write 3 sentences in a day. Now, if my job is to write for a living, it's one of the main parts of my job, 3 sentences a day isn't acceptable. It needs to be more like 1,000 words a day. So how do I do that? Well, I accept that the writing process is long. The writing process is iterative, repetitive, circles round, gets revisited. I accept that. And the reason for that is because I can't write very well. Even though it's my job, even though I've been doing it, whatever, for over a decade. Now, if I am in this situation where I've done all the work that I've done and I've edited books and all the rest of that, and I can accept that my writing's no good, everyone else should be able to accept that as well. Or at least undergrads and masters and PhD students should be able to accept that. If you accept that your writing is no good, it frees you to write badly. It frees you to say the things that you need to say, get them written down, and flow through it, get 1,000 words written. And that is a great feeling to get 1,000 words written. But it comes with a caveat, obviously. There are 1,000 bad words. There are 1,000 words which need to be worked up. They need to be edited. Just as a quick sidebar on that. This year I've had a lot of success of not actually writing in terms of typing, but writing in terms of speaking into my iPhone, or other phones are available. And that has been even more freeing for me. So what I've actually been able to do is articulate my ideas in the writing that I've done this year through my iPhone while I'm walking the dog. I've got an hour in the morning, and I can often write 1,000 words in the morning just by speaking into my phone. Now, when I come back, I have to really edit that, and that editorial process has to begin straight away. But it's one way of freeing that up. So back to my original idea, accept that your writing is bad. Don't get stuck on it. You know the sentence is wrong, don't sweat it, move on. On to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. Then on to the next paragraph, and so on and so forth. Get the words down. So once you've done that, we have to now accept that that is not a good piece of writing. It's a start point. It's better than nothing. And what we have to now understand is that that's completely normal, and to edit it is part of the process. And I'm very, very confident that nobody ever writes a first essay, first as in the top mark that you can get at university. No one ever writes a first just like that. They don't just start writing one day and then write a first. What they do is they edit a first. So we don't write a good piece of work, we edit a good piece of work. Once you can get that into your head, 1, you're freed up and you can now write freely, get it done. 2, you have budgeted the time you need to edit a first, to edit a good piece of work. So it might take you a week to write the words, but it might take you 4 weeks or longer to edit it into a good piece of work. That is a reorganization of your time and your management of the essay process that I think is important to grasp. And it starts with that acceptance that your writing is probably bad. So the first point is accept your writing is bad. The second point is no one ever writes a first, they edit a first. Okay, with that in mind, if we're going to accept that our writing is bad, but we also need to try and get a good mark, and we're also at university getting a higher degree, it denotes something. There has to be clarity and there has to be attention to detail. This is something that I find many of my students struggle with. It's something that I've always struggled with, and I know that it's something which, with the proper amount of effort, I can get past. I can tackle this. I can manage it, but it takes effort. Proper proofreading is a challenge. When I say proper proofreading, for me, I'll tell you what that means. And again, if this is good enough for me, as someone who does this for a living, I think for most students, this is something that you should try as well. When I write an academic paper, I will write in the way that I've described. I will edit it. Then I will properly proofread it. What I mean by that is I speak every single word out loud. I will lock myself in a room. I may have the dogs with me, and I will say the words out loud on every single sentence of that paper. My papers are quite long sometimes. Social sciences, we write 8,000-10,000 words. It can take me all day. But the process of articulating the words verbally, putting them into the room, even though there's no one else with me, makes me hear the mistakes, makes me hear the inaccuracies in the grammar. Now, I don't know what they are in terms of English. I'm not good enough at English grammar to understand until I hear them. Now, when I hear it, I know. I'm a fluent English speaker. This is my only language, and I can speak it reasonably well. I just can't write it well. So I have to speak it. This is often the case with a lot of the students that I work with. And they feel silly and they feel embarrassed. Well, it is what it is. Lock yourself in a room and do proper proofreading. The reason I drill this down is twofold. One, it's very, very hard to give a high mark to a piece of work with spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes. One, because that's just not what we expect of our higher students. And two, because if there are mistakes in that way, it makes your analysis hard to follow. And even if I think your analysis is correct, maybe your analysis I think is amazing, but I can't understand it. Can I really give you a high mark for that? I'm giving you a high mark on what I think you've done. So clarity is needed to ensure that the clarity in writing, detail, attention to detail, grammar, spelling is needed to ensure that the clarity of your argument can come across so I can give you marks. But probably more importantly than that, actually, is that attention to detail is a very, very important factor in employability, in getting and maintaining a job. Now, in various areas of my job, I struggle with attention to detail, and that holds me back in certain ways. Now, I accept that and I try and manage it, and where there's other places where it doesn't matter to me, I don't worry about it. But if you're a young person with a degree trying to get a job, attention to detail is essential. How many times have you heard stories of people putting spelling mistakes in CVs? I mean, that's it. You're done. You won't get an interview. It's as simple as that in many cases. And emailing your boss with spelling mistakes. I mean, are you the type of person that boss is going to think, hey, this person can represent the company really, really well if your emails are full of spelling mistakes and poor grammar and typos? Trust me, I know from experience. I consistently email my boss with spelling mistakes, and she probably doesn't think I'm the person to represent the institution that well. So please take that on board. If you've got a bad attention to detail, you have to front up to it. You have to put the work in for marks and from getting a job. Both things that you want. So manage that. And then finally, simple, clear sentences. Always try and write as much as you can in 1 line, 1.5 line sentences. If they're longer than that, the analysis gets lost. And that's often because you've lost the analysis. And if you've lost the analysis and you've written over the course of like a jumbling sentence, how do you expect the person who's reading it to pull out your analysis? I always have a rule for this. If a sentence goes over 3 lines, if it gets to 3 lines, it needs your attention. Now, it may be that a sentence at 3 lines works and can, with a little bit of a comma here and there, can be fine. But once it goes over 3 lines, you have to change it. You have to get it back down. And really, if it is at 3 lines, you want to get it down anyway. Often, the most simple thing here is just to break the sentence into 2. Usually it's the sentence has got 2 elements to it, and you know they're connected, and you just bosh them together. Just separate them out and have a clear link between the sentences. Also, with the use of language, avoid jargon, and if you can say something simply with less words, just say it. Just say it. Instead of complicating it and adding layers and layers of complex words, just say it. The Richard Feynman method here is useful. Richard Feynman always thinks that if you can explain something simply, you most likely understand it. And it's the same with this. Keep it simple. And that's the same with paragraph length as well. I have another rule for this as well, 8 to 12 lines. If the paragraph is over 12 lines, it needs your attention. It's probably too long. You've probably tried to write about too many things in it. If it's under 8 lines, it needs your attention. It might be that you haven't fully developed the point. It might be that it's a little bit short, requires some more references and some more filling out, some more evidence. Or it might be that it's connected to another idea, and another idea is buried in a different paragraph, and you can put them together and you can get it within that sweet spot. Now, I didn't say it's always got to be 8 to 12. I said if it's less or more, it needs your attention. You need to look at it and consider it. It's a flag. And when we come to the editorial process, the proofreading process, your eyes will get accustomed to that. Your eyes will get accustomed to what an 8 line to 12 line paragraph looks like. You'll see it. I'll give you an insight. One of the first things I do when I'm marking a piece of work is I look for a beginning and introduction and conclusion that makes sense. And then I look throughout the piece to see if there's any paragraphs that are really long. And I go straight to those long paragraphs and I read them and I see if it makes sense. Or I find a short paragraph and I go straight to that and I see if that stands up on its own or whether it actually needs some work on it. Because they're the sort of things that people write. That's the style of that is the style that people write in when they haven't found meaningful coherence, which is something I talked about in the last video. Use building blocks that make sense, 8 to 12 lines with sentences that are simple and clear. That is one of the hallmarks of someone who has found a coherence across their analysis that makes sense. Okay, and then the final one. Oh, is that the final one? Just looking at my notes. Yes, that is the final one. So that simple, clear analysis, that simple, clear use of sentences and paragraphs at the end demonstrates a refined analysis and delivery. That's my final point, is that to polish a piece of work, to get it up to a first, that's what you're after. No longer are we just looking for correct spelling and a bunch of references. We're looking for a refined analysis and delivery. Very, very few spelling mistakes, very few grammar mistakes, clear discussion of broad ideas, simple but clear discussion of quite complex ideas, and with a coherence at the end which pulls everything together. One reminder, this whole basis of doing good academic writing is based off good academic thinking and good academic understanding of the area. That can be understood through the idea of a complex of ideas, which is a video that I put up elsewhere. I'll put a link to it. Make sure you have a look at that. Revisit these videos when you've done different levels of your work. So when you first start out, you may want to look back at the first video. That'll get you going. When you get towards the end of it, you may want to come back to this video and make sure that these points around polishing your work are sorted and are into your work. And also you may find that when you've got close to the end, that revisiting the first video might help as well. Okay. Hope these have been useful. Maybe another one that follows. I've run out of ideas for now, but there'll be more to follow at some point, I'm sure.